Welcome everyone to JB Media channel, where we're going to share through and learn through one of the famous stories of a person who went down in history, having caused one of the biggest holocaust of 6 million people dead. Imagine that. And also leading to a death of around 60 million people in the world during his ruling period. And definitely know, quite a number of you do know who the guy is. We're talking about Adolf Hitler. The reason why we're going to talk about this story is not for us to really praise the deeds of this guy, but we are going to learn from the fact that what really happens if a dream is not well supported. It leads to someone being a catastrophe in the world. And also looking at the bit where if hate replaces empathy, and also the bit where our ambition goes over and beyond and replaces what we call compassion, then definitely humanity loses its meaning. Yeah. So through the story, part one of the story, we are going to talk and look at the early life of Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was born in 1889, that is on 20th April, in a place called Braunau am Inn. Braunau am Inn is in Austria, that is in Europe. Hitler wasn't a very talkative guy. He was an introvert, not conversing so much and engaging in so many conversations. He kept so many things by himself. The mom, called Akara, was a very lenient mom. Then for the dad, called Aloisa, was strict. He was a guy devoted to ensuring things have to be done in order. A good attribute, yes, but we shall see the danger bit of it. At a young age, we said Adolf was an introvert, not speaking too much, but he already showed his capability or his talent in art. He could walk in the outside and doing his own artwork and painting drawings. And when Dad saw this, he was so much pissed off. He was like, "You ain't going to do those stuff. You have to go to school. You have to study, get good grades for you to get a very formal job in the government." That was what the dad wanted. But for the mom, supported what really Hitler wanted to be. But you see, the dad had the loudest voice. He always won. So the mom was like, "You are really talented in this stuff. You will have to go for it." So there was so much of the conflict in the house. For Hitler, he was so silent. He felt the burden, but definitely the loudest voice spoke it out. So he maintained that, but silently. And when time went by, actually, the dad died. The dad died at an age when Hitler was 13 years. So there was that moment of a quiet come in play. And you see, for this, someone who had been pushed back to pursue his talent, he was like, now I have freedom. But you see, sometimes freedom, if not well guided, it leads to something very dangerous. So for Hitler, he got the freedom a bit, whereby he even started skipping some classes, staying on the outside for long hours, not attending classes and doing his art. The teachers actually had a description for him. He was smart, yes, but lazy. For Hitler, he had one mission. He wanted to finish school, then do what? Move to Vienna to just pursue what he wanted to be, an artist. So he really devoted, finished school, took his bag then off to what we call Vienna. In Vienna, he devoted into wanting to join a certain art school. He went ahead into doing so much of the practices, drawing so much, perfecting much more, and focusing much more that kind of zeal. When he submitted during that 1 year of practice, what really came out was rejected. Look, he has devoted so much into it, but rejected. But again, he never gave up, because that is what he really wanted. He went ahead again into devoting, doing so much of the learnings. That is on the second year. Fine-tuning the beats a bit more and doing much more. On the submission bit again, it was rejected. So those are two rejections. He was in pain, definitely. His heart burdened. When that came, when now he became a bit reluctant, he didn't submit again. What he did was he proceeded into doing the drawings and doing the artwork. But now, for the paintings that he did, he started now selling them locally on the local tourists in Vienna. Because remember, this is a boy who's come from a family not very well, and this boy who has already lost the dad. So he had to survive in Vienna. He did that. Sometimes he could sleep in open rooms. Yeah. And unfortunately, when time went by, the mom became ill. Yeah. So Hitler could constantly visit the mom in that state. He could draw beside her bed, and the mom could encourage more. And time went by. The mom passed away. So in this second part, we are going to look at now, at that time when Hitler had already survived, yeah? Remember now, the mom having died. Yeah? So what forced Hitler to do was he devoted himself into selling part of his, or selling some of his artwork to the tourists, just for him to ensure that he's having some constant survival cash in the city, because definitely he's not coming from a background where there is some good coin, so he was to survive. So he went ahead into selling the paints to the tourists and making some coins. And sometimes he could actually sleep on the benches on the outside, also sleeping in some open empty rooms within the town. Yeah. So also some point he went on bed without meals. Yeah. So he missed meals because there's no that good flow of money. So during that time, because you see, there's that rejections that have actually come from the school, the art school that he was so enthusiastic about. So what he did was he slowly started deviating from really giving so much energy on the artwork, painting stuff. So he went ahead into devoting to something new. And the interest that came in play was for him to start focusing and looking at leadership. So he started learning about ruling, learning about how power really worked. Yeah? And through that bit of learning, getting so much information on the same, the countries were coming up and growing. Yeah? The countries across the world, like even Germany itself, the Austria and all that. Then there was that bit of enmity that was growing within these countries. And boom, there is war that came in play. Yeah. So when the war was actually announced, every country was trying to recruit, or every country was now recruiting men to join their armies. And remember, this is Hitler, who had already lost the mom. After losing the mom, he's like, now for me, I have to really belong somewhere. So when the countries had already announced the fact that they needed men, he saw this as an opportunity. He went ahead into applying, being part of the army for what we call Germany. Remember, this is a boy who was in Austria, and also is just a neighboring country to Germany. So he went ahead into joining the soldiers in Germany for him to actually belong. And in that section, he was given a very specific role. He was to be a messenger, that is, delivering messages to the soldiers. It was a trickiest and also a very riskiest part of the job. It was a risky job because also there's that bit where you're hanging on a thin line between your life and death. But definitely, because of that devotion and the feeling of always wanting to belong, he devoted in doing that role with due diligence. Yeah. And during that time, when the war now began, he really devoted in doing his best craft. And even the soldiers who really worked with him, they really described this young man as a man who only focused on his craft. He wasn't so much into the conversation with people. He really spoke less. He was not a big talker. Yeah, for him, he did his job right. All that time, he actually got some 2 awards, yeah? And one of the awards that he received was what we call the Iron Cross. And this Iron Cross was a symbol of a person who was so much determined and resilient, and who did his job wholeheartedly. Yeah. So he really got that good accolade as a reward of good service during that war. Yeah. And you see, the war continued. Actually, it came to an end. Germany lost. And there was so much of bad stuff that were amassed on it. And one of the things that Germany was to do was to lose part of its land. Yeah. Then number 2 was also there were some restrictions that were also imposed on the army. And these restrictions were coming on what we call the Versailles Treaty. The Versailles Treaty has some segments in it. And one of the segments was it was to lose part of its land as a compensation for the war. Then also there were some restrictions on the number of army soldiers it was to have. You get? So the war led to so much of the devastation. Yeah, you see, war comes with so much negativity. Definitely there's loss of property, loss of life, then there's that bit of even food insecurity. And what really came after this was that people went on the streets with no enough food. So much of people on the streets. Beggars, the number of beggars definitely increased, yeah. And the soldiers were never seen as heroes. In fact, people saw them as people who had led the country into failure. Yeah, and definitely people fail. Most of them, and a good percentage of them will definitely find someone to blame. Yeah. So also these really struck Hitler really good with the kind of devotion that he had put in play. He really wanted to see Germany win. But here it's a country that has lost, then definitely there is that bit of the negativity that is being imposed on it. Yeah. So the bit that came after is that people always blamed. People always met in the beer halls speaking about this. Yeah. And always finding fault in terms of who did what and what. For Hitler, he was like, now, the leaders were the ones who led us to this. If the leaders could have done the right thing, then definitely we could have won the war. Yeah. So for him as well, he joined the other people in the beer halls, always conversing about this and blaming all that. For him, he could be in the halls to listen. He never spoke too much. And at some point, during that moment where people are always meeting and speaking about the war, it came at a point where there's a certain guy who belonged in the Germans' working party. He spoke at a certain beer hall. In this beer hall, we had Hitler listening through. And when Hitler was listening through, this speech really moved people. He was speaking about all these sorts of blame games again. And when this guy finished speaking, Hitler decided to join his party. And by then, Germany's working party was not that famous. Yeah. And Hitler joined, he listened through. And when he spoke, people really listened. Yeah. And people listened to the point whereby they started giving him much more attention. When now Hitler realized that really I'm getting that attention of the people, he went ahead into practicing more. Yeah, he spoke and people were like, you see, who is that young man who speaks our mind? Who speaks to our hearts? Who is that young man who is speaking in or who is speaking to our hearts? He really speaks exactly what we feel. That really motivated Hitler into doing much more of the speeches that went ahead into moving people or really creating the trust of people believing in him. So time went by and the belief actually grew stronger. Yeah. And when he did that, he got much more following. The people got to know more about the party. Much more, actually more people joined the working party. And when he was part of this, he actually went ahead into changing the name of this party into what we call National Socialist Germany Working Party. And also at that time, he also changed the flag. And the flag was a red one with a swastika symbol. And the symbol was just an indication of the determination and the benefit of it all. Yeah? So during that point, after defining all this, because you see, he has become a star of the party to the point whereby he could make better decisions for the party. After feeling that, he is a person who has come from the point where he has come from an art capability or an art ambition to someone who has now become a speaker in the party. And he has made the belief to the people. After doing all these sort of things, actually, he started now motivating people into believing in one of the dangerous ideologies that were actually spread. And that ideology that he spread was that there were some kind of people that were benefiting much more than the others. You see? Then it was like the leadership as well was to blame. So he went ahead into defining his speeches to the point whereby when he spoke it out, people were believing. And you see, when he was talking about the people, some people, he was attacking out the Jewish and the Roma people. And this group of people were actually categorized as the non-Aryan people. Yeah, having some features that were actually very different from the others. Yeah, and also coming from the other bloodline. So this ideology was a very dangerous and negative one. But you see, because people have come from a war and they've lost, people are desperate and they're suffering. What people do in that state, they will definitely find the best voice to believe in. Yeah, the best voice, it could be not the wisest, but because this voice is very strong, people went ahead into believing in what Hitler told them. Yeah. And when he amassed and became the top vocal point of the party, he went ahead into now wanting to overturn the government because he has already blamed the government, not doing exactly what he had to do to protect them. He went ahead into blaming them and inciting people to follow him. So there is a point where he instituted and organized what we call a coup to go and take over the government here. And that coup actually was called the Beer Hall March here. And this march was to march to to the government offices to overthrow. What they did was he gained a lot of people who supported him, definitely, but now some soldiers were against his idea. So on marching, there was so much shooting that struck out during their time going to the government offices. Then lots of people were killed, yeah? Quite a number of his men were killed. And after the killings for him, he was arrested. And the sentence was that he was to stay in prison for 5 years, yeah? But he went ahead into being in prison for only 9 months. Yeah. So during that time in prison, he wrote a book. The book was called My Struggle. And this book he was just defining on what he went on through and also defining his plan to save Germany. So he went ahead into defining the same in his book. And the book really actually reached a lot of people. The ideas were really sold across. People really got to know what he was planning for Germany. And when he was out, he had learned something very strong, that sometimes influence is spread just through how you're able to convince people through the speeches. That is the weapon that he used to really convince the people. So after time in prison, he went ahead into organizing so much of the speeches, so much of the engagements with people, to the point whereby now people strongly believed in him, always selling that the idea of a successful Germany, but at the same time selling an idea of some people getting much more benefits than the others, and then always defining a capability way of really eradicating the same. So it was a negative idea that was being instituted, people believing the same. Yeah. When time went by, in 1933, Hitler actually was appointed on the highest position in Germany. He became a chancellor. Yeah. People celebrated. People went on the street, thousands of them celebrating, hailing Hitler, and all claiming how this was a miracle for them. Yeah. But deep down, they never went ahead and really getting to understand what this guy was planning, the dark part of it all. Yeah, he went ahead into, after being appointed, he started defining how he wanted things to run, because he wanted to be a ruler. There is a big difference between being a ruler and being a leader. A ruler is like, you people have to worship and listen to what I say, and you have to do it because it's me who is saying. You don't give space for any other or the other people. How he did that was he started banning some other political parties. You get? Then he went ahead into defining rules and also changing the laws. You get? After doing that, he was also to define what are you people airing out in the TVs, in the radios. You are to air what is approved by the government. You get? There's also that bit whereby in schools and classes, you people were to always talk about Hitler in a positive way. You will find that people, neighbors are spying over the neighbors, children spying over their parents, you see, and even the children who were told to really listen closely. What are the parents talking about me? What are people saying about me? So in the radios, it was all about hail the Fury, which all means that this Fury is like a father to us. You get? So no one was being allowed to speak against Hitler. Many people believe that it was the right thing to do because this guy knew exactly what was needed by the people. How he managed to also convince people is that definitely after being a chancellor, what he did was he really reopened up what we call the factories. The roads were built. You see, people got to go back to school. You see, people got to get jobs. Now, doing all those stuff, people believed in him. You see, so time went by. Then you see there's that idea whereby he is still spreading that negativity about the Jewish. So there is a point in 1938 whereby the Nazi team actually went ahead into attacking the Jewish homes and shops, buildings and what have you, breaking through the windows, breaking through the doors. In this period, it's actually recorded as a period of the Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht actually means a moment or a period of a broken glass, whereby the houses of the Jews were looted into. They were broken, and there was so much of the vandalism that was done. During that period of the Kristallnacht, actually around 30,000 men were arrested. They were picked from their homes to some other centralized location. Yeah, and in those areas, people were actually being put into what we call harsh labor. You're working so much, but at the end of the day, thousands of them were killed. You see, those camps were so much protected with barbed wires, you couldn't escape, and they were well managed and what we call guarded by Hitler's men or Hitler's soldiers. So also Hitler had what we call a certain team of police called the Gestapo, who were always listening around and spying. If he said negatively about him, then definitely you could be eliminated. So you were to watch your mouth. Who is listening? People during the day, they could smile. During the night, they're always trying to whisper, what is next for me? Who is gonna really, who is watching me? Who is talking ill about me? So, but still believing in him. So time is going by, and in that moment where now the Jews are also being eliminated, this guy is growing that vigor or the enthusiasm to take over the world. He could tell the generals that, you see what, this red flag with the swastika symbol has dominated the world. He went ahead into now starting the World War II. September 1st, 1939, Germany tankers rolled into Poland. That was the first country. Blitzkrieg is a tactic over a lightning war, where you move in with speed, you cause the destruction without these people really planning themselves. So you see, you are getting them off guard. They ain't ready. You attack them on the first go. Then you do it so swiftly. When they're not aware, they're not prepared. Yeah? That lightning war strategy really enabled him to really attack much more. He went ahead into attacking one by one, from Poland, there is Denmark, going to Norway. You get, also attacking France. When he did this in Poland, going to other countries, also France and Britain, they declared war on Germany. Yeah. So during that period from 1st September 1939 going to now 1940, this guy was on top of it. The swastika flag was all over in those countries because of that strategy of the lightning war that he actually used. Yeah. He went ahead into dominating much of the Europe by 1940. At the same time, in the other side, the Jews were being killed mercilessly from that period, from 1933 to coming to 1940, to the end of the war. Jews were always being killed, and the Roma people. They were the non-Armenian people. So they are being taken from their homes to a certain central location where there is so much of guarding, then do so much of the work. Then at the end of the day, they are being killed. Yeah, women, fathers, men, children, all were being killed during that time. And that period is a period that goes in history as a Holocaust, one of the deadliest moments that ever happened. Jewish and Roma people were killed. So this guy is on top of it in 1940, you get? But you still have that greed. When it goes beyond a certain level, it turns into something poisonous. Greed turning to and going to a certain limit, and then definitely it will result to your downfall. So there's a guy who is already dominating at the top of it, but still greed, he wants to dominate all over. He goes ahead into attacking the Soviet Union. That was one of the dangerous moves he did. That was in 1941. The Soviet Union had unbreakable soldiers. Yeah. Then Soviet Union by then it had this vast land. The land was huge. Then there's also those moments of winter, really breaking through and hitting them was not easy. So for the German soldiers to really reach this Soviet Union, they were to move through this vast land. And there is that bit of you're crossing the winter period, you're crossing through the snow. Thousands of them died without even seeing the enemy. Because there's the moment where there is no food. You see, the weather is already hitting on you. A good number of them froze in the snow. Yeah, but quite a number pushed and fought ahead. But now this heat, they're finding the soldiers were unbreakable. The soldiers of the Soviet Union were well trained. So Soviet now retaliated back. Yeah, and during that moment when they're attacking these people, having now America join the war. So America joined the war because of the Japan attack of American basemen in Pearl Harbor. Remember, Japan was an ally of Germany. So that is what now triggered the Americans to come into the war. So you are having the Soviet Union attacking Germany from the east. Then we are having the Britain and the Americans attacking from the west. That is the moment now Hitler started getting the hit. You see, it proceeded, and now there was so much of the bombing come to Germany. Buildings were being destroyed because you are facing very strong enemies coming play and hitting you hard. Yeah, but at the same time, Hitler never ceased killing the Jewish on the other side. Yeah, so we had now Britain, America, Soviet Union coming to hitting Germany, and you see these German people. There is a time in 1943 where he actually lost one of the biggest war in Stalingrad, and what actually led to a result to this is that this guy really lost a lot of soldiers in that war. That led to so much of the retreat coming from his people. Yeah, at that point there is that surrender happening. Also, some allies started surrendering those wars, and that surrender was now hitting this Adolf Hitler so hard. So he was like, he never wanted to give up. He really persisted and avoided to really face the truth and continued to shout in the TV that we are not going to surrender. We are almost winning the war. He really avoided to see the reality, or maybe he just ignored it because of greed. He continued to press on, urging the soldiers. But you see, there is a moment when also you as a soldier, you're saying, really, with this push, we are not going to make it. But your leader is saying it. Some continued, some were already demotivated. They were low in the spirit and continuously lost the spirit to persist in the war. Yeah. So after losing so much in 1943, there's a time that came whereby the France had now pushed really back. The Soviet had already pushed back. So let's look at the fall of Hitler, our last part. So you see, in 1945, we still had now Germany really surrounded by the superpowers. It was being attacked from the east by this unstoppable Soviet Union. They really moved in close. Yeah, then we are having still America attack moving so closely. Yeah, we are having the Britain and also France attacking and retaliating back. But this guy was not giving up. He still got reports from his soldiers facing the real hit, but he could still hail, "We will not surrender." He really refused to see the reality. His city in Berlin was being bombed from all directions. The soldiers started even disobeying him because they couldn't definitely believe in this blind promise that are still going to win. You see, children were being hit. People went ahead into hiding in the basements. For him, he now moved ahead also into making the commands under a certain bunker in Berlin. He looked at the maps, giving commands, some that were not being taken in because of the soldiers also disrespecting him. That is the moment when now we were having this empire coming down. Mass destruction came in play. And in this year, 1945, on 29th April, we had a certain lady called Eva Braun, who had been with Hitler as a companion for a very long period of time. She was not ready to surrender to leave him. As much as this was a false companion, that is only what she had. She continued with Hitler for that long while. So in that day, the date 29th April, what Hitler did was he married Eva Braun. Yeah, it was a very small celebration with few friends, definitely, where they shared stories. Yeah, they talked about everything, their life, what they have been able to go through. Now, on 30th April 1945, they moved into a certain room. That is Hitler and Eva Braun. They shared the conversation, talking about their past. Hitler talking about once he had a dream of being an artist. The dream was never fulfilled. Into him turning into a soldier, yeah, turning into a speaker, to the point where now he turned to be a ruler. Just sharing the memories. Then a moment of silence. A gunshot was heard in the room. That was the end of Hitler. Yeah. So the Soviet Union had moved closer. And on 8th May 1945, Germany now surrendered. Soldiers retreated only to find ashes. Their ruler had already gone, and that was the end. This had led to a mass destruction, 60 million people having died during that period from 1939, from the onset of the war, to now 1945, May 8th. So from all this is that this is a person who had devoted into becoming something else, but now having shifted to something else, but with a wrong ambition. Looking through the fact that he had a misguided kind of I would call it a misguided kind of ambition to eliminate certain kind of team or certain kind of people from the society. Can you just imagine from him, whereby there is someone who is devoting that there should be a certain kind of a tribe or a certain kind of a community should exist, the other should be eliminated. We all coexist, different tribes across the globe. We all coexist, different tribes, people with different skins, people with different ideologies, people with different height, shape, different accents, but definitely this is what makes the world beautiful. This is what makes humanity interesting. People with their different capabilities, that is now what contributes to the emergence of good stuff in the world. So anytime someone shifts the mindset of ensuring that there is only the existence of one, then that is what resulted to that mess. So anytime look through the story, it really highlights on we as humanity, we got to definitely love ourselves more, love your neighbor in their capacity, love your friends in their capacity, and not to grow what we call bitterness of who they are. And also finding a way of not blaming. Blame games is also what resulted to this guy growing into that kind of bitterness that resulted to that negative kind of killings. You see, the world looked at this and they were like, never should this ever happen. The world went ahead into really building peace. Countries came together to define the best ways of building peace. So this is a man who went down in history as a tragedy, not as a hero. So best learnings for me, definitely, and what I could share is, you definitely have your dreams, you want to achieve them. There are also those obstacles that come in play. It really doesn't mean that if it's failing, you have to find whom should I put this on, because that is definitely what Hitler did. So my idea about the dreams of the young ones, just from the history of Hitler, is that the dad was against him being an artist. That also relates to our parents who are like, you see, I just want my child to be this kind of career and what have you. But sometimes times are changing. Kids or people tend to grow interest with time from what they're watching, from what they see, from what they practice. And maybe the kid will come and tell you, see, I just want to be a DJ. Then you're like, no, but you definitely have to be a doctor. Definitely you have to be a doctor. You have to be a lawyer. So you're forcing your kids to be something they don't have interest in. So your bit is, you don't force them, but maybe you guide them. Tell them reasons why you want them to be this. But if they give you a validation that, for me, if I venture into this DJism, that is where I feel my heart is all into it. You see, these children are watching so much stuff in the world. They're watching movies, they're watching the DJs do their stuff, they're watching football. Then they be like, I want to be a footballer, holding your hand and telling you, oh, this is what you want to be. However, you define to them and support them. For them to be professionals in that specific field they've shown an interest in. For me, that is what I think. Then the bit where you're noticing that this child has gone ahead into even taking themselves over and beyond to even presenting the ideas out there. Then you see the judges, you're like, there, you see, you can never be that. You reject. You see, I think even if you're doing those rejections, you do them with a bit of modesty, whereby you are not going to go for this stuff. You can try it something else. Give an information in a way that it promises someone or gives them that kind of optimisticity, in them becoming something else. You can actually tell someone, you can try in the next audition, or you can try in a certain area and what have you. So I think there is that capability whereby you're not just rejecting, but you're giving a promising capability to this person who has voiced through becoming what they want. So that is the second line. Then on the bit where you find that this guy has devoted into something totally different, it has to be guided. Any dream that comes in play has to be guided. So this is a person who is like, I want to be a ruler. But for you, a guardian or whoever, you have to really define and ensure that you're guiding this person very nicely. Let them be compassionate in what they do. Let them have empathy in what they do, because that is basically what defines humanity. You as leaders in your spaces of leadership, then definitely look at an aspect where you want to be the sole owner and the sole decision maker of stuff. It's also dangerous in an aspect where you're the one who is waking up in the morning saying, I'm going to define rules the way I want things to work the way they have to in this place. You don't want to really appreciate the ideas of the others. Then it leads to a downfall. Because remember, people are blessed with ideas. People have different thinking capabilities, and the more you allow people to think with you, and the more as a leader you allow people to give the ideas, it really works miracles to your organization, your company, and your staff. Yeah, but if you deny them the capability, then you're the sole owner, decision maker, then you make a mistake, it all submerges. That is also the bit where, so you who wants to be in the position of controlling, look at the capability of being a leader and not a ruler. This world doesn't belong to you alone. It belongs to everyone, and everyone has a right to exist where they are existing. Yeah? Cool stuff.